Well, thanks everybody for coming. My job here, as I always tell everybody, before things start, I keep my mouth shut and do what I'm told. So I've been told to be here, so here I am. The western slope of Colorado was a very, very isolated place around 1860 and 1870. High mountains, heavy snow, cold weather, high mountain passes, isolation, nobody here. It was a mysterious area. And then, beginning in the 1860s, we began to hear about the Ute Indians who inhabited the area. And in 1868, the mining was starting to pick up in Colorado, and the Ute Indians were moved in a series of 4 treaties. One took them into the San Luis Valley, another one took them out of there and on to the area west of the 100th meridian, and 2 cow camps were established. One was established along the White River outside of the town currently of Meeker, Colorado. That was the home of the White River Utes, or the Northern Utes. The other one was established at a place called Los Pinos, not far from Cochetope Pass. And to feed the Indians, a cow camp was established right where Dos Rios is today. The word Dos Rios is Spanish for the meeting of 2 rivers. And that's right where the Gunnison River and the Tomichi Rivers come together. And that's where 3,000 Indians, 2,000 sheep, 3,000 cows were located in and around that cow camp in the summer. The Indians, of course, were out at the Los Pinos Indian Reservation for most of the year. Coming into Gunnison, no town, coming into where Gunnison is today, on Christmas Day in 1872 in a driving blizzard was a guy named Alonzo Hartman, 22 years old. And the cow camp had started 4 years before. As a matter of fact, one of the guys who was in the cow camp as a cook, Sidney Jochnick, wrote a great book called Early Days on the Western Slope of Colorado. And he goes all the way through what existed at the cow camp. And then, around 1873, silver and gold discoveries came in the San Juan. And as a result, it looked like more mining was going to go on in the Gunnison country. And the Ute Indians were now moved out by the Bruneau Treaty of 1873. And 2 years later, Alonzo Hartman, in charge of the cow camp, took all those cattle, all those sheep, all those Indians, and took 75 days to go from the Gunnison cow camp to Kelowna, the new home of the Ute Indians on the Uncompahgre River, 12 miles south of present-day Montrose. When you drive that road today, Highway 550, if you turn right at Kelowna, you're going to go up to Fairway Pines and come out Log Hill, you come back down into Ridgeway. So the Indians are now there, and this is the story of Alonzo Hartman, who now became one of the great men on the western slope of Colorado. So a few things about him. Born in 1850 in Iowa to a Canadian father and a mother descended from Daniel Boone. 1858, at the age of 8, moved to Kansas. 1863, family moved to Denver, and Alonzo Hartman finished school after the 6th grade. 17, he worked for a cattle company supplying beef for the Transcontinental Railroad. In 1870, he had his own herd at the age of 20 in the San Luis Valley. In 1872, he worked for the great pathfinder of the San Juan, Alonzo Hartman, in his store at Saguache. That's how he got to know Otto Mears. And then, because of Otto Mears, Alonzo Hartman became the head of the cow camp in Gunnison. Then, when the Ute Indians left, Alonzo Hartman took up a homestead on what had been the Gunnison cow camp at Dos Rios and began building up a great ranch. He continued running the post office. He continued running a store right there, and he filed on an irrigation ditch. And that irrigation ditch today is the oldest irrigation ditch in the Gunnison country, dating back to 1875. He became a founding member of the Cattlemen's Association, vice president of the First Bank, and then in 1882, he married 29-year-old Annie Hagler, the assistant county clerk from West Virginia, who had taught school in Kansas and was an accomplished painter. In that year, he wrote in his memoirs, and I quote, "From a town inhabited by only prairie dogs, Gunnison is now a metropolis of 4,000, with 2 schools, 5 churches, 4 hotels, and stores and businesses. And it was the hub of the wheel for all the action now going on in the Gunnison country." And when I say the hub of the wheel, it was the hub of 5 great silver camps, which had opened up, all of them with great dreams, and all of them with 2,000 to 4,000 people. One of them was Irwin, 10 miles west of Crested Butte. One of them was Gothic, 8 miles north of Crested Butte. One of them was Pitkin on Quartz Creek, about 30 miles from Gunnison to the east. One was Tin Cup on the edge of Taylor Park. And the other was White Pine at the base of Monarch Pass. 25 to 40,000 people came to the Gunnison country by the year 1882. Railroad arrived August of 1881. Alonzo Hartman was the first rancher and one of the first people to really get the western slope of Colorado going. There wasn't anybody in the Uncompahgre Valley. You know where Montrose, all the way from Montrose to Delta to Ridgeway, that area, said John Gunnison in 1853 when he went through here, was a desert. The Hayden Survey in 1874 said, "It is a desert and therefore uninhabitable, so I'm not going to say anything about it." It was all sagebrush, as the Gunnison Valley was before irrigation. Until they irrigated, there are none of those great hay meadows that you see today. I've got early photos of Gunnison 1879 and 80, and it's just a bunch of sagebrush. And the only trees and green grass you had were right along the Gunnison River or Tomichi Creek. Other than that, it was a near desert. It was so isolated, the Gunnison country was, that a lot of bad men took refuge here. Wyatt Earp ran a faro exchange where Treads and Threads is today on Main Street. Frank and Jesse James worked on a ranch outside of Parlin. Billy the Kid spent 3 weeks on a ranch near Doyleville. And Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid rode through here in the 1890s. And Butch Cassidy, having a beer in Cochevers, left his gun belt, holster, and gun, which the Cochever family has. The gang yelled out, "Here they come," here came the posse, and out went Butch and the Sundance from Cochevers. Alonzo Hartman was actively involved in one of the great cattle-sheep wars in Colorado history. The other big one was up in northwestern Colorado around Browns Hole and Browns Park. And the major problem was 80% of the land in the Gunnison country is federal. Only 20% is private. And as a result, you had to get a permit to graze on federal land. And this was all economic. You can say all they want about the cattlemen being Anglos and the sheepmen being Hispanic, but the fact of the matter was, both sides wanted land to graze their animals on. And one time, 4 men over on the Cochetope had 4 domestic sheep. They were kicked out of the Cattlemen's Association for having sheep. And they protested they only had 4 domestic sheep. Alonzo Hartman said, 4 can grow to 400. One other time, one of the sheepmen asked Alonzo Hartman, "Have you ever eaten mutton?" And Alonzo Hartman said, "Yes, I have, and I'm damned ashamed of it." What ended the cattle-sheep conflict was the involvement of the federal government. When the federal government got involved, that was the end of the violence, because the cattlemen now knew that if they committed murder or they committed crimes, they are going into the slammer at Canyon City. And an informal line was drawn. You could run cows all the way to Cimarron. And from Cimarron to the east, that was sheep. Now it kind of held during that time. 3 children were born to the Hartmans, Hazel, Bruce, and Leah. And now in 1891, Hartman moved from his stone house on Denver in Wisconsin, which is still there, built out of Gunnison sandstone, into the famous Hartman Castle on his ranch. $45,000, that's worth about $1.6 million today, was used to build it. Victorian, brick, 3 stories, turret where Annie painted, white oak curved staircase, 3 rooms on the 2nd floor. Annie Hartman went to the World's Fair in Chicago in 1893 and picked up items for the house. The Hartman Castle and the Levita Hotel were called peacocks among mud hens in Gunnison. The other buildings weren't quite as pretentious. Annie Hartman came back with marble Italian statues, murals, Ute artifacts, all in the house, which was encircled by antlers. The Hartmans lived there for 20 years and had a lot of parties and dances. The Levita Hotel and the castle were places to be. In 1911, at the age of 61, Hartman sold his ranch because his son Bruce didn't want to take over. He moved to the Paradox Valley, bought land, wanted to irrigate, planned to raise fruit. Not enough water. World War I, and Alonzo Hartman lost most of his money and returned to Gunnison. He lived there until 1926, when he moved to Mojave, California to live with his daughter, and a 54-year career in Gunnison was over. He and Annie returned to Gunnison yearly until 1935 for Cattleman's Days. While in California, he began his memoirs, which I have. Now, I was very fortunate. In 1971, one of my graduate students and I drove to West Jordan, Utah, where Alonzo Hartman's son, Bruce, and his wife lived. And we were there for about a day, and Bruce gave me the family album. That's where most of the pictures on these slides are going to come from. So I got the family album, and I got all the handwritten writing of Alonzo Hartman of the history of the Gunnison Valley and the building of the Hartman House. Now, Bruce was about 85 at that time. I wish I'd been able to spend more time, but I didn't know then what I know now. I still learn. I'm still learning today, but I know a little bit more than I did then. Alonzo Hartman died in 1940, almost 90 years old, and Annie died 3 years later. Hartman goes down in Gunnison and Western Slope in Colorado history as one of the founders of Gunnison, along with Sylvester Richardson, the first rancher on the Western Slope, and instrumental in the opening of the Western Slope. Lifelong friend of the Ute Indians. He did not care for the way they had been treated by the United States government and remained their friend for life. Started irrigation in the Gunnison country with the Hartman Ditch. And of course, he built the Hartman Castle. With that, we'll stand in the back, we'll turn the lights out, and we're going to take a look at the Hartman Castle and the area around Gunnison in the 1880s, 1890s, etc. Thank you. Thank you, Lisa, always for doing the hard work here.
You got it.
All right, here we go. This is the Gunnison Hotel in 1880. That's right near Dos Rios. That cabin still stands on the property of the Gunnison Museum. Next, Dobe John. In 1880, this guy, who had come from the San Luis Valley, rode a cow with a sled and a mounted barrel of water on. And he went around the town of Gunnison. He made a lot of money. He'd sell water for $1 a pail. Next, there is Gunnison from the top of the Levita Hotel looking towards the Palisades in the 1880s. Next, There is a great shot. That is the top of Cupelo Hill right behind Mountaineer Bowl in Gunnison today. And that is the Moffett smelter, a silver smelter. And they're digging it, getting ready to hopefully say that that smelter will operate well. It never did because Gunnison just did not have, the Gunnison country never had the high-grade ore. You know, when I talk about the great silver and gold town, precious metal towns of Colorado, there are 17 great precious metal mining towns in the United States. That's gold, silver, lead, copper, and zinc. 10 of them are in Colorado. Uray, Silverton, Telluride, Georgetown, Leadville, and Aspen, Central City, Creed, etc. And then you can go to Alaska, and the Sierra in California, and Virginia City, Nevada, and Butte, Montana, and Globe, Arizona, and the Homestake Mine out of Leeds, South Dakota. So, the San Juan is really big. To give you an idea what I'm talking about, Uray, Silverton, and Telluride, each one of them turned out at least $250 million worth of gold and silver. At a time when silver was selling at $1 an ounce. Today it sells for 35. When gold was selling at 20 an ounce. Today I checked on the New York Stock Exchange, $4,650. If you do the math, by today's prices, billions and billions of dollars came from precious metals in the Gunnison country and in the San Juan primarily. Next, there is the Gunnison Gas and Water Works. Gunnison was very lucky in 1882. We had a great engineer named D.J. McCann, and I've got all of his memoirs. He was a graduate of the University of Michigan. And Gunnison got lights very early, water very early. A lot of the other towns took another decade before they got that. Next, there is the Tamichi River flowing, probably a little higher than it is today, in the Gunnison country in the 1880s. Now, if you look on the side of the Tamichi, you don't see irrigated hay meadows, do you? Because they haven't really started to irrigate yet. Next. There is the Gunnison Hose Company in 1882, right on Main Street, about 2nd and Main. That building, that high building you see on the right, that still stands on Main Street today. Next, there is the Denver and Rio Grande laying tracks. They haven't quite gotten into Gunnison yet, but this is August of 81 and they're building in. Narrow gauge, 3 feet wide. On August 6, 1881, the Denver Rio Grande arrived with an engine called the Pacific Slope. And I can't tell you how important that was. Prior to that time, everybody had to be self-sustaining. You're not going down to City Market or Safeway to stock up for the week. And they were. The Gunnison country obviously had beef, right? Everybody had chickens. Everybody had geese. We had all kinds of fishing that was done. They had a cheese factory up Ohio Creek. Another cheese factory in Gunnison. They made their butter. They had pheasant. They had prairie chickens. And in 1881, a guy by the name of Harry Cornwall was a mining engineer at Irwin. And the boom busted. And he, his brother George, and his father came in from New York and they bought a ranch up Ohio Creek. And, I got his memoirs, and he said, Father planted a garden. And every rancher laughed uproariously. They said, what the hell do you think you're doing? You can't raise any agricultural produce here with this cold weather and lack of a good growing season. But he said, Father planted a garden in New York, and you're going to plant a garden here. And everything came up, onions and carrots and parsnips and beans and peas And ranchers rode in from 20 miles away, said Harry Cornwall, to look at that garden. And after that, every rancher had a garden and fresh vegetables. Everybody had an ice house. So they were self-sustainable. One of the big myths of the Gunnison country is you can't raise agricultural produce. And we got a lot of organizations today that do a great job of it. Why not? We got perpetual sunshine. For every 1,000 feet, you go up 1 degree in temperature because you're closer to the sun. So when it's 80 in Gunnison, it's really 88. And we got water and rich soil. Next. There is the building of the Levita Hotel in August of 1882 on South Boulevard. Next. Still building. Next. There it is. $250,000 in 1884. Teak and mahogany, crystal chandeliers, Persian rugs, peacock among mud hens. 4.5 stories high. One of the great hotels of western Colorado, ranking with the Sheraton, ranking with the Colorado, ranking with the Hotel Jerome and the Strater and the Grand Imperial. Next. There is the inside of the Levita Hotel. Next. There's the Levita Hotel, and that house in the white still stands. That is the Edgerton House. And it's where people who didn't have a lot of money would stay overnight because they couldn't afford the Levita. And if you look on the side, it says Gunnison Skating Rink. A big skating rink out there. Next.
That's technically right where Cattleman's Arena is now, right? Is that the rodeo grounds where the skating rink is?
No, that's a little ways away. That's on South Boulevard, and the big rodeo grounds are right near Safeway, so that'd be east.
A little bit further over.
But not far away.
Okay.
Next. There is Gunnison's Main Street looking north in the 1880s. Look at those wagons. The street looked like it needed a little improving. Next. These are guys with their burros and mules with all kinds of stuff on their back, and they're ready to go out and pan for gold. Next. There is, I think we showed that, didn't we? Yes, keep rolling. There's a good shot of the Moffett Smelter and Gunnison in 1882. And you're looking to the northwest. Next. Again, a shot of Gunnison in the early days. Next. There is one of the schools, the Ohio Creek School, 1880s. Next. There is that's the Palisade Hotel. That's right on Virginia and Maine today. The Oddfellows had that, and it burned down about 20 years ago. Next. There it is again. Horace Tabor put money into that. He was one of the main owners from Leadville. Next. There's the Pacific Slope, the first railroad that came into Gunnison August 6, 1881. Next. There is the 12th Street School. You can see those schools are pretty fancy. Next. There it is again with the Moffett Smelter in the background. Next. Gunnison Review, Main Street. Next. This is the Tamichi Valley Smelter, 3 stories high, located near where the airport is today, smelting silver and gold, 1886. Next. There is a reunion of the pioneers that all came back. Here is Alonzo Hartman coming back. This would have been in the 1920s or early 1930s. Next. Gunnison again. Next. There's where one of the wells was. They have 7 wells in Gunnison today that provide the water. Next. I love that one. The Gunnison Brewery. We had another one down on the Tamichi. called the Guthiel Brewery. Next, burros. When the great days of mining were over, wild burros roamed all over the place. That's one right in Gunnison. Next, there is Alonzo Hartman and his wife Annie Hagler Hartman. Next, Hartman Castle and other buildings. These all came from Bruce's book that he gave me, scrapbook that he gave me. Thank goodness.
Yeah.
Next, there is the family. Now, the guy in the middle front, that's Bruce Hartman. He was 85 when I saw him in 1871. Next, when I say they had a lot of antlers around there, I mean it. Next, it says north view of Dos Rios, taken from Meadow. Got a nice windmill in the back. Next, there again is a great shot of the barns. Alonzo Hartman had 2,000 acres, 1,000 cows, a lot of horses, a dairy, and he also raised a lot of chickens. Next. Now there you go. Now you're seeing Eargate Hay Meadow, right? That is the Palisades in the background. Look at all that hay stacked up there. Looking north, and that's all Alonzo Hartman's ranch. So if you come from the Palisades and work your way south, that's all of his land. One of the great ranches in western Colorado. Next, there's a shot of the people who work for Alonzo Hartman. He had many employees. Next, there are the trees. That's kind of where you can see that cabin there on the right. That's where the original cow camp was. Hadn't been moved yet. Next, Bruce Hartman riding a small pony for the camera, obviously. Next, I love that shot. That is Taylor Hall on the Western State Campus. That is North Hall. Central Hall has not yet been put in, and South Hall has not yet put in. And this picture, taken Western Slope Normal School, this right in here became the rodeo grounds, the original rodeo grounds. Next, this is how they got around. These are the ladies. I don't know where they're going. I don't think that is said. They're riding around the buckboard. Next, there's a great shot of the castle at high tide. Beautiful building. That turret up there, that's where Annie Hagler, a very, very accomplished painter, would go up in solitude and paint. Next, you know, I always say, and I think Alonzo Hartman would agree with me, when he married Annie Hagler, as we say on the Western Slope and in Upper Michigan where I'm from, Alonzo Hartman outkicked his punt coverage, which means he married way the hell up, which most men do. This is Cattleman's Days, main drag, right on Main Street. Big gala affair. Next. Isn't that a nice shot? That's a small buggy. Next. There they are again with the kids. Leah, Emily must be one of her friends with her. Next. Now, one of the things that is really important in western Colorado, this is Aunt Susan Bryan of the Bryan family. And the black people, there are more black people in the Gunnison country than people believe. One guy was named Shavers. He had been a bodyguard for Abraham Lincoln. He ran a barber shop. Aunt Kate Fisher in Tin Cup ran a hotel. That girl, I can guarantee you, saw more of Aunt Susan than she saw of her mother. There is the family right on the steps of the castle. That's Alonzo Hartman and Annie Hagler. Bruce is on the right. One of the daughters there in the middle. Next, getting a haircut. Didn't cost you anything. Next, this is taken in Union Park, and the cabin still exists. And the Union Park Cattle Company, they ran cows in Union Park and in Taylor Park, and that's the cabin. That cabin still exists. My cross-country team used to run right by there. We would run them, start with Lotus Creek, and they would run into Union Park, and one day I was there, I drove around, had they take all their stuff off as it got warmer, and I'd drive around. As I came around, they were entering Union Park, and Dave McLean and the Cattle Association were running cows, and those cows were running all over the place. I thought, oh my God. But we didn't cause it. I walked up to Dave, I said, no. He said, no, you didn't cause them. But I remember one of the guys riding out after those cows, which had stampeded, and he was, you have to lazy, well, pardon me, he says, "Giddy up, you son of a," like, my cross-country team got a good education running through Union Park. Next. This is a cabin that is located on Spring Creek Pass, right at the head of Cement Creek and the Taylor River, back in the 1880s. And if you look, it says hotel, remodeled by Leary Daly. Next. This is the Union Park Cow Camp and the great little lake that is right next to it. That's where Alonzo Hartman and a lot of other guys grazed their cows. They had permits. Next. This is a picture of placer mining that went on in Union Park. And the guy that did that was a man named Fred Lottis. And today you can go to the Lottis Creek Campground, Lottis Creek. And he sold out, get this now, he would take out every summer. He came in 1861 with Jim Taylor. Jim Taylor came into Taylor Park, named after him. Fred Lottis came into Union Park because he was a Union man. And he took out an estimated $5,000 worth of gold every summer. And in 1885, sold to a Leadville company for $55,000. At that time. In 1900, returning back into Union Park over Gunsight Pass out of Ohio City, he fell ill of a heart attack and froze to death 40 years almost after he had first entered. Next, the dairy. As I said, they had a dairy. Now, you see those cans? I threw those cans around a lot on my dairy farm. You could put 80 pounds in. Next. There is the windmill, and there is the castle, and there's some of the other buildings, and there are a lot of antlers. Next. Another great shot in the wintertime. Next. Again, there are some of the workers. There's Aunt Susan on the left. Next. There's a great shot of the Levita Hotel, the Edgerton House, and in the wintertime, this is all part of the Alonzo Hartman Ranch. Next. That's the last one. That's Bruce Hartman and his wife in 1938. Bruce in 38, let's see, died in 71 at 85, so you take away 33 years, he would have been about 52 then. He told me that he didn't want to take over the ranch because he knew he could never work with his father. That's why I become a farmer. I could have never worked with my dad either. I love my dad. But so Bruce had a mink farm in Utah and did very well. So I want to say that all of these were black and white, and we AI'd them because you get more perspective. And here's the guy that did it for me, Steve Jenkins. Give him a nice round of applause. I don't know what I'd do without him. He's on a retainer. Are there any questions that anybody has? Michael?
I just have one. Alonzo was also postmaster briefly.
Yeah.
In Gunnison.
In Gunnison, yep.
Was that Alonzo? But was that before Rangers in, or?
No, that's when he was. You know, very early when he. This would have been, I'm thinking, probably in the 1880s.
So about after the Indian Age.
After, right, exactly, yeah. Well, he ran the post office, you know, out of the old cabin there, but in the trees for a while too.
Yeah.
He would ride to Powderhorn once a week with the mail. And they had the Saguache to San Juan Road that ran from Saguache right through Powderhorn and into Lake City. So he would take the mail and then collect the mail.
He held the post office where the corner cupboard was, the second building. If you look up above, it says Hartman, 1881. He had the post office there until 1890.
Very good.
And then that's when he gave it up. He had been kicked in the ear by a cow, and so he lost his hearing, and so he found it difficult to continue, and so that's when he gave up the post office.
The Edgerton House, you said it's still standing. Is it a large brown building now?
Yeah,
Okay.
and they have apartments in there.
Okay.
Yeah, oh, it's a great building, yeah, it goes way back also, yep. Anything
We
else?
used to have the ghost writing on it. And there was a building right in front called the Lunch Counter.
Yep,
When I
Yeah.
first came to college here in '79, it still had that ghost writing.
yep,
Yeah.
yep. I want to thank Pam and Deb. They do all the hard work. As I said, I keep my mouth shut and do what I'm told. So I'm done. Any questions? Thank you all for coming.
I'm going to just tell you real briefly kind of where we're at. We were fortunate enough, there were just a lot of things that fell into place, that getting that CPI designation for most endangered places really elevated our, the exposure that we got. And then we were also awarded a $100,000 grant from OEDIT and
Office of Economic
Development and International Tourism.
Right.
And then Dave and Susie Taylor currently own the castle, and we get the other house, we get the original farmhouse as well, and then another building. And they allowed us to put it on the historic registry. So then another fabulous volunteer wrote the grant for an acquisition grant through History Colorado. So that went in April 1, that was due, May, yeah, and we had it reviewed. And so anyway, we're waiting to hear on that. So with all of the fundraising and for all of you who have donated, thank you. And the OEDIT grant, if we get that acquisition grant, we will be able to purchase the property.
Wow.
So it's almost 3 years since we started. But we also realized that what we were doing was deemed dang near impossible, and we didn't know that, or we didn't care, I don't know. Anyway, we're doing it anyway. And so, yeah, then we will be able to start the restoration, preservation. We've already gotten it through the county to be able to have events. That was one of the criteria that we had as a board before pursuing it, was that we needed to have a purpose for it. We needed to be able to do something like this. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been able to keep it afloat. So it will be, after we get it purchased, it will be events that will be paying the bills, it will be grant writing, and it'll be fundraising. So it'll be, similar to like what this works. And,
I was
and
there
there's-
5 days ago, and they had the arts people there. I got in about a half an hour after it started, and I think I had to walk a half a mile to get there with so many cars. That was one of the things. It was fabulous.
Yeah, it was after all these many years, these many years, to see the castle come back to life that way. That was amazing.
Alonzo and Andy would be very proud.
Yeah, I think so too. And you know, you've had such a huge part in that. You're a good friend of Dave Taylor's. You've been twisting his arm. You know, you put it up for sale. I just wanted to get real quick. The grounds of the castle and the castle itself are available for tours now, and we're doing that. I'd say 3-4 times a week. So if you have family that come into town this summer and need something interesting to do in the south end of the valley, go on the website. Pam is awesome at social media, Pam and others, but she put together a great website. Get on our email list. She writes a great newsletter. You know, let us know that you would like to come down and take a tour around. Yes,
Yeah,
we
what's
have a
the
donation jar out.
What's the website?
The website is
Hartmancastle.org.
Okay.
We are a nonprofit organization. One of the other things too with CPI, I was and I know that it works, but these ladies have been really generous with their time, and we've really had a wonderful collaboration of other nonprofits and people who have stepped up to help us when we needed it.
Yeah, thanks for coming, everybody.
Yeah, I'll say, so wait, one more thing, thank you, Deb, for saying it, because we actually have a tour
Oh, yes.
scheduled for Hartmans with Dwayne. So if you enjoyed this and you guys want to walk the streets yourself, Dwayne's gonna give a Gunnison history tour. We're gonna look at some of the oldest buildings downtown. And then that's gonna round out with an afternoon tour of the castle. That is June 17th. $20 from every tour ticket, and that goes to Hartman's Castle Preservation. So great way, you can sign up for that tour right now before you even leave the door. If you want, lunch is included. It starts in Gunnison at 9 a.m. We've got a shuttle picking up folks from the museum at 8 a.m. if you want to. That's Wednesday in a couple weeks.
This is going to be the first tour, I think, that Gunnison has ever had of the buildings. Had in Crested Butte, but not Gunnison.
Yes, much.
So we're going to check out the
Yeah.
hospital that was operating in 1906. You're going to go to the Denver and Rio Grande Express Station, which is now the Center for the Arts. You're going to go to Loudon Mullins' house on South Boulevard, etc. I won't give everything away. And
So
a lot
fun
of
to see
interesting
there.
stories.
Okay, Dwayne, I want to say one thing real quick. Everybody's tired of sitting, listening to the great lectures and stuff, but this is a cattle ranch, right?
Yeah.
Alonzo Hartman had 2,000 acres. Of that 2,000 acres, 110 acres are left that have been more or less continuously ranched since Alonzo Hartman owned it. And that 110 acres are under threat. Okay? There's some good news, there's some bad news. The good news is the man who owns the property now is very reasonable. He's been quite willing to work with people. However, there's some bad news. There's been a rezoning that's happened to this property. It's been zoned for high density development. Could allow up to 1,600 homes just south of Hartman's Castle. It could be a potential disaster. So I just want to raise the issue. It has to be addressed in much more detail later, but we're going to have to do some work if we're going to preserve some of this character of the land around the Hartman's Castle. I'd hate to see all that converted to high-density housing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, thanks, folks.
We'll be
I'm
around
just-
if anyone has any questions. But